Now, another thing we haven't talked about that I've noticed, I'm 63 years old, and I started on our first glutathione enhancement when I was 57. And I was already starting to feel run down. And it was discouraging to me because I've always had a high demand for energy. I write books at night. I create television shows in the day. I'm working with attorneys and agents of movie stars, and I hated the fact that I was losing my energy. And one of the first things I noticed on our very first product was all of a sudden, from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed, I felt great. I never felt a spike in energy, but I didn't run down like I did. Why is that? Why? What does glutathione have to do? And especially Celgevity with ribosine, what does it have to do with energy?
Well, first of all, so many people think that if they're low in energy that they need caffeine or, some type of energy drink that I won't mention. But realize true energy, that well of energy that we have actually comes from the mitochondria, which are in every cell in the body. Fat cells only have maybe 2 or just a few mitochondria, but cardiac muscle cells may have as much as 2,500, whereas muscle cells may have a few hundred. But what's interesting is as we get older, we find that more and more people develop what we call mitochondrial dysfunction from oxidative damage to the mitochondria. So that, that our energy is produced in these little mitochondria. They're energy factories. The energy that is produced comes out in the form of ATP. So the more ATP we can make and the more mitochondria that are functioning at optimal function, the more ATP we're going to produce, the more energy. But it's interesting, they did a biopsy on a 90-year-old man, and they discovered that 95% of his mitochondria were dysfunctional. But they also did a muscle biopsy on a 5-year-old boy, and they found practically none of his, just a muscle biopsy, practically none of his mitochondria were dysfunctional. Why? Because young people have adequate amounts of glutathione, whereas older people, generally, they have much lower amounts. In fact, after the age of 21, we have about a 1% reduction of glutathione per year. So actually, you want to see when we start really going downhill. It's not after 30, it's after 21. But we find that when we can optimize the glutathione level inside the cell, those mitochondria start, first it quenches the free radical reactions that have been built up. It detoxifies the heavy metals and chemicals that have gummed up the mitochondrial machinery that produces the energy. It restores and repairs the mitochondrial membrane so that the body is once again able to produce that tremendous well of energy.
Well, I know that, just a little fact, I remember in 2009, University of Virginia produced an 8-year study to determine when aging starts and when old age is official. And they monitored 12 markers that are related to dementia. And they said when we see those markers start to drop, that's when the aging process starts. When we see the majority of them go off a cliff, that's when you're old. And listen to this. Aging started, what we call aging, where they all started to go down, was the age of 20.
Wow.
Where 8 of the 12 fell off the cliff, they said, this is when you're officially old age. Your body in today's society in America, 27.
My goodness.
And then the rest fell off at, I think, 35, 42, and 45. But they were blown away at how soon we really start aging in this society. Now, I'm sure that wasn't the case decades ago when we were mainly an agrarian society and we didn't have all the manufacturing, we didn't have all the toxins, we didn't have all the heavy metals. Food had nutrition, the soil wasn't depleted, and yet, oddly enough, here's what really hit me, is that glutathione levels start to go down 20, 21.
Right.
And so there's that aging process.
And what's so important is when our glutathione levels get low, and this is what's so important, we can no longer effectively quench these free radical reactions. So we get increasing oxidative stress, nor can we adequately detoxify these chemicals, these heavy metals, these solvents, these toxins, these pesticides, and as well as even certain medications, as well as alcohol. So we get increased amounts of these toxins that accumulate in our bodies that create even more inflammation. We get more and more inflammation, and that's why we're seeing so much inflammatory disease. It's absolutely rampant.